Hey everyone, Shoes here. This Irish Life, back with Buried Ireland series, episode 10, number 4. So, part 4, we're bringing the saga to a close, a rip-roaring close. Today, we're going to continue our Starfort view. And we're going to look at Kinsale. So the Battle of Kinsale, you might remember from the last episode, is in the 1600s. And, excuse me, 1601. And it was a major turning point for the final defeat of the native Irish, so the native Normans, the Fir Bolg, the Tuatha Dé Danann. And we're going to have a look at Kinsale now today and see if there are some remnants of this old, of these old star forts here, these old stars here. Excuse me. So, get your bearings on this map is that I'm gonna be, so Charles Fort is up here, okay? So up here, and that's here. And you can see that the river comes down and it winds up and back out over this way. So we're kind of going to here, just about here. So we can see this star fort. So that's where it breaks. So we're looking for this fella here. And I think there's another one just here, but that could be right in the town and you wouldn't see it at all. But we'll see, can we see it? So we're looking for this chap and this chap. And the reason it's interesting is that these could have been left after. Just blow the well, blow the well, blow it. I wonder. So let's have a little drop down in here. I'm going to use the map over on this side just to keep it out of the way, so you can be making out features in the ground yourself to your heart's content. So it is just where's the river? I'm looking for a mound more so than anything here. I'm not looking for the fort because the fort is clearly buried. So I'm looking for the mound that the fort's buried under. And this seems to be the mound. Abbey Fort here. Look at that. Where's that now? That's just as you're coming into the town. One of these, one of the mounds. So it's not your typical star fort shape either, but I was just hoping to maybe see a little bit of covering just to see the level of devastation. This is a housing estate now by the looks of it. Kinsale Sports Centre. Like that there now, I can see the bump in the land. It's just that undulation in the land is what gives it away. Oh, whoa, sorry. Sorry about that, lads. Maybe we'll see a bit more up here. And there was an awful lot of battles taking place up here as well in these areas. So, like, they march, they talk about the armies marching. Like here, look here, we've got a golf club. The golf club's the ultimate shimmy for the stars. Like, here we go, actually. You can see the broad outline. This is the way they seem to go now, actually, now that I think of it. Like, you can kind of follow the river and it follows, like, here, and then the trees. Like, you can see them all right once the eye is trained a bit for it. Gently does it. Gently does it. Okay, so I'm thinking all these. See the edge here? Oh, I need to go up a little bit. So I'm seeing that as the edge of the fort. Is that rolling down the hill into the golf course? And this is the edges here. That's the boundary of the main, and that's the middle of it. Wonder what's in the middle. What have we got in the middle, if anything? This here won't buffer. So I suppose that was just to check into Kinsale really to see. I mean, obviously everything is covered, you know, and we've got one or two on the coast that are left. But all this landscape, everything we're looking at here, it's all different star shapes, linked in, separated by canals and gigantic walls. Belguli. And these are all like hills of varying size. It's all hills, 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 hills. And there's no such thing as hills. They're all wells. They're all mega wells. So Kinsale, the point of an epic battle where Ireland was essentially lost. Flight of the Earls, 1909. That was the end of the Normans. That was the end of the Fair Bullock or the Tuatha De Danann slash Fomorians. Or was it the Fomorians? Was it the invader? Who knows? We're not really sure exactly how it went down. But we are going to get in, and we are always, every time we get into it, we discover something epic. So we're only 7 minutes in today, and we're going to have a quick look at Desmond Castle just for the crack. And I think we'll have a quick look at at Charles Fort as well. I should drop down. Is Desmond Castle right in the town? Desmond Castle took a couple of hits by the looks of it. Good old Kinsale. I've been down to Kinsale many, 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 many times. Lovely place. Myself and Doug did a podcast down here called The Flooded Starfort Mystery. Check that out. That's pretty cool. Imagine that animated now. Everyone goes in there and they're like watching the movie. They're like, oh, like that was some sort of a movie going on at the time. The windows were all talking, doing fancy holographic, funny shapes. These are all generating no noise though. These they were all delighted with Mary. Uh, Priest up here doing something. What kind of a priest? I don't know. Was there a priest? Was there no one? You'd imagine there was somebody in charge of this. You would. I mean, like there's a pulpit. Like I think. I don't know. I don't think. I don't know. Check that out up there. Okay, Desmond Castle that was. Desi. And a little grotto there at Holy Mary again, you know. Was that the local Holy Mary? Go and have a chat with her. Maybe she'd make you feel good. Maybe like everyone thought they were talking to the goddess. Maybe that was what was going on. Maybe they tricked everyone to think that they were talking to the real people, and there was a whole cloak and dagger thing going on. Like, there's definitely something going on with these, with statues. Whether statues were 3D printed or people, or not, I don't think it's people frozen. I think it could be like androids frozen, or whether they were chipped out of stone with a chisel. There's something going on with the statues. There's something about them. There's just too many statues to for it not to mean something, you know. Charles Fort. Let's get down to Charles Fort there now. I thought it would bring me down. That would have been nice, but let's look at some pictures. I would say check out myself and Doug's podcast on the flooded Star Fort mystery, which we did a couple of years ago. And we went to this Star Fort and walked inside it. There's like a guided tour. You go in, they pretend like that the English built it, and it was used as a fortification. Look at the coastline here. These are all mega wells, all of it. And like these are the edges of the fort. It's right onto the bedrock, but sure, this bedrock here could be like that could actually be limestone here at this stage, I'm thinking, and this could have gone down again, you know. And this is all flooded up, and this part here didn't have water. None of this was flooded. But we were all in here, in and about. We took some videos. We did a podcast in there, called it the Flooded Star Fort Mystery because of all the dirt inside here. Obviously, it's a coastal one, so you could definitely make a case for if it's by the sea, it's more of a chance that it could be flooded. Look at this here though, like it's just mud everywhere. But we know that everything was flooded anyway. But back then, when I was investigating it first, you have that air of, I mean, like it's quite a mind blow, as I've said before, to discover that history was only reset a couple of 100 years ago. And you finally get an explanation for all the massive architecture that makes no sense whatsoever. I mean, there's nobody building these in English times. Like the size of it, it's huge. Is there any people around? Like it's just a monster of a thing. Like these are huge, absolutely huge. Did they take out the turrets? Are they gone? Oh no. And these big, like they're brick then. So like brick, what was the brick? Any other good pictures? It's quite an impressive gate. So that is Charles Fort, and I'm sure it played a major role in the battle of some sort. There's a picture of it from an angle. You can see that it's got all the extras here and it's coming out further. And it is a lovely spot. Lovely spot altogether. So that's Charles Fort in Kinsale. And as we said, we had the siege of Kinsale, which was the final battle, essentially, for the Irish near the end of Queen Elizabeth I. So, what happened was this loss put an end to Spanish help in Ireland and to much of the Irish resistance. The Ulster forces returned to their home province and they surrendered in 1603. The Treaty of London, there was a whole thing. They went to London, they were made look foolish, I think. I'm not going to read all of that. So the old Gaelic system was finally broken at this stage. So the Brehon law was also abolished, and Brehon law was law by judgment rather than law by legislature or laws. And it was a great system in Ireland, and I think it will once again have a part of Irish culture, the Brehon law. It's a very fair way, and I think it was probably the Norman way, the Empire of Ross way. The invaders obviously have a different way. They like the whole laws. Can't do this, can't do that. Um, the Earls left from the town of Rathmullen with some of the leading Gaelic families in Ulster. They travelled down through Lough Swilly on a French ship. Once again, like the French were the Normans as well. They were all the Normans. There was no real difference, I don't think, in terms of allegiances. I think most of Europe was fairly well connected in terms of, still at this stage, at the end of the 1500s, 1600s, it wasn't completely, the the old Ross dynasties weren't completely annihilated yet. They were nearly annihilated. The next couple of years finished them. And that Gaelic system, so this was the end of the Normans, or what we would think of as the Normans now that we've tracked back in time somewhat. And following that, then we had the 30 Years' War, which was a war of 30 years in Central Europe. And so it mirrors what was happening in Ireland across Europe. So was this a Europe-wide civil disruption, like the White Rose versus the Red Rose? And the Holy Roman Empire in here as well. So the Holy Roman Empire to me is the sneaky one of the whole thing, because you've got the Roses in conflict in the 1400s, and they say that didn't carry on, but that was probably the original breaking up, and it's going on then. Like 1400s it started, then all the wells blew. 1500s, we're into the 1500s, still some wells left, still a bit okay, but not great. And then by the 1600s, everything was done and dusted. And the Roman Empire had instigated the War of the Roses and become the power at the end of it then, and usurped all the power. Like here we've got like German Protestants and Catholics in 1555, the Peace of Augsburg, to end conflict between Catholics and Protestants. Like, was this the same, the Red Rose versus the White Rose? It's the same paradigm, same conflict. It just mimics what was going on everywhere else. I mean, I don't know, were there legitimate differences between these two groups? Like maybe physical differences? Were they physical? Did they come from very, very different places, or were their bloodlines very, very different? Were they altered in some way, maybe? If we're considering the whole T1000 crystal clones in there, did they have anything to do with this? Were they clone wars? Were these all clone wars where no humans even fought in them? There was no humans died. They just used what was left of the silicon clones, and maybe everything only got turned off not that long ago as well. Who knows? Maybe in the 1600s there was still some remnant of the old technology working in certain areas, certain wells. Maybe they're all self-sufficient. It would make sense that they'd be self-sufficient. I don't know, maybe they all went off together. To be honest, I think we're getting a bit too deep into the unraveling of it, and we should take a breather right there, is what we should do, and look at a very interesting little set of pictures that I have called My Map on My Wall at Home. I hope I can find them. I can. I'm not sure how good these pictures are. I took them fairly quickly there earlier on today. So they mightn't be great, but we're going to give them a whirl anyway. I think the resolution should be alright enough to see what I want to show. So this is a map of Ireland that I bought in a place called Glengariff, beautiful spot near Castletownbere. It's down here, down this area. We went to Castletownbere in one of the episodes. We tried to find an old mansion, but I couldn't find it. Castletownbere, so I bought this map there, and it has. How close can we get in? Can you see? Like it has the old castles on it. It has the mountains. Has a couple of famous people. The lakes. Lochray, Ishnock, all here. So really cool map, really cool. And I noticed today that on it there was this lad here. And some people will recognize this. We've got the double-headed eagle and a Templar cross on a ship. So I'm not sure what prompted that. I don't know why they put that on the map. I have the name of the map makers. Maybe it was pure artistic flair. I don't know. But what I'm thinking is that there probably would be some method to it, that this symbol and this symbol is associated with a Spanish Armada ship. So the Milesian invasion of Ireland, which happened, they say, in whatever year it was. I think it's a mythical year. They don't even have a year for it. Well, I think the Milesian invasion is the invasion, and it was St. Patrick, and it was the invaders, essentially. And these weren't the invaders. These people here weren't the invaders. These are the ships that were standing in the harbour at the time of the invasion, I think. And that Ireland was essentially Spain. It was the same place. Ireland and Spain and France were one and the same in terms of connectivity and culture. Like, take away all the sea and the flooding and all of that and put yourself in these star cities, in these crystal canal star cities 1,000 years ago. High tech. Uh, it's a small geographic area. It really is a small geographic area, so it shouldn't come as a surprise that Ireland and Spain could have been the same place. And the talk of the 160 in this 1600 and 1601 war, so we're talking about the 1600s. In 1583 there was battles. This is on the west coast of Ireland, so just to tell you where I am. We're on the west coast. Up here, just over here, around here. Get that other map up actually, and then we can see it on the map as well. Oh, you can't go that fast. So it's here. This is where it is. So into Galway Bay, Galway, in here. And if you remember, this is where Manannán Mac Lir, so this is his lake, Manannán Mac Lir's lake, Loch Corrib. This is where Dún Bress was, the son of Éireadh, and the Fomorian, the half Fomorian, half Tuatha Dé Danann prince, although they were all half Fomorian, half Tuatha Dé Danann, as I said before. But this is his area here, and this is Cong, where the first battle of Mai Tura took place, as we well know at this stage. But this is where the ships were. So these ships were in the bay, sunk, as far as I can tell, as far as I remember. So here we are. There's Loch Carrob, Manannán mac Lir's Loch, Galway Bay, ships here. And we've got more ships as well, which I'm going to show you. So what I'm thinking is Ireland is essentially the same as Spain. And like it talks about Ireland being invaded by Spain by the Milesians. I think that's another spoofy that it's like Ireland was invaded by Spain. It's like it wasn't because it was Spain, if you know what I mean. That you couldn't invade yourself. So they made up a Spain. Made it up like Spain is, oh yeah, Spain. There was no Spain. It was all the Normans, the whole of Europe, I think. It just paints that picture. It just looks that way, doesn't it? So we'll have another little look at this before we move along. So it was grounded at Carna, having been lured to shore by the bonfires of a party of wreckers from the O'Flaherty clan. Fantastic story. So there's like a Spanish Armada. I think they say the Spanish Armada came to help the Irish in the 1600s war, and they did help them at times. I wonder whether these were the ships that were in the Irish bays at the time, though. I can't, I just think that like it's a link from Ireland to Spain, but it's an unnecessary link from Ireland to Spain. I'm wondering, are these links there to say that they're the same civilization? It's like Spain, or it's like Scota, the Pharaoh's daughter, who came to Ireland with was it a Firbolg and the Median? Can't remember. No, it was Milesians. Scotia was with the Milesians. So the Egyptian, the Egyptian Pharaoh's daughter came to Ireland with the Spanish king. That must be right. Eth. Is Scotia the Milesians? I thought she was. But once again, is that a connection to Egypt? When it doesn't matter what time she was said to have come in, and does that mean then that Egypt was part of Ireland? There was no divide. It was the one place, and these were in the bay, and they were sunk in the bay. These were the Irish ships. I wonder. Up here as well, we see 3 ships of the Spanish Armada sank near Streeda Beach. Sank in the bay. 3 ships in the bay. Were these the Irish ships? This is the question that we need to be asking. Were these the Irish, Phoenician, Tartarian, Norman, whatever you want to call them? Girona, Spanish Armada, 1588. Another one, sunk in the bay. This is 1588 as well, sunk in the bay. The year of the French then, look, the year of the French. General Humbert's French expeditionary force landed near Killala. Like, once again, it's the Normans. They were all the same. They were the same people. They were the people of the canal, this section of the canal civilization. They spoke Ogham and Hebrew language, or the equivalent of like Gaelic, Irish. Um, so lots of ships in the bay. Are they the ships of the Gaels, the Galone, the Firbolg, the Normans? They're all the same people. And then we had the same thing, Battle Kinsale down here, where we were a moment ago. Battle Kinsale. And then we've got the Vikings, another parallel, but a more sinister almost, definitely a more sinister feel to the Viking. They came as invaders, of course. Where did they fit into it? I wonder, are the Vikings the invaders, the final, Are they the Roman Empire, or the Vikings the Roman Empire? Painting themselves as pagan warriors, but they weren't pagan warriors, they were the same as, say, St. Patrick. Like the Vikings and the longboats, I think, were all Norman. And then the invaders pretended that they were all the different races that they weren't, if you know what I mean. So if I am going to invade a country, I am going to pretend to be, if I successfully invade a country, I am going to pretend to be all the different parts of that country fighting against itself in almost a civil war scenario, so that they can never blame me and they'll never know it was me because I'm writing the story. But I'll pretend to be them all. I'll pretend to be the Tuatha De Danann. I'll pretend to be the Vikings. I'll be the Normans. I'll be St. Patrick. But all we know is that there was wars and there was an invader and there was an end to a civilization with a serious thump. Now, is that the end of that, I'd say? And John F. Kennedy. There is, that's that speech. I listened to so much of that stuff years ago. JFK living it up there in Maui since 1962, 1963. Legend. Might have been a great guy, wouldn't know. The good and the bad are the same. It does not matter. So, where are we? Where are we? We get the bearings. We're finishing up there now. Like the revelations are thin on the ground at this stage. We're really just joining the pieces that we're putting together, and we're just trying to consider just how short a time ago this was, and just who were the people that were in Ireland and England and Northern Europe. I think they were all invaded together. Like nothing, like it wasn't 1066. It was 1500. Something was happening. And 1400, something was happening. And somebody was getting invaded. And it runs up until like the early 1700s, which is where we're going to go next in this episode. Because in Ireland, there's a very bloody and famous event. Whether it happened or not, I don't know, or whether it was all an illusion and a tale designed to invoke emotion, I don't know. But the massacres at Drogheda, where we started our tale, at the mouth of the River Boyne, and Wexford, they were events that happened during the Cromwellian siege of Ireland. Basically, where a guy called Oliver Cromwell came in and just caused absolute carnage. He slaughtered just the whole populations of everywhere that he went, essentially. And this was in the 1700s, apparently. So they say now it's in the 1700s. But Oliver Cromwell could well be the same person as one of these earlier people as well, whether if he existed at all. Like, because there's a very good chance that all of these battles, that they didn't happen. We have to also consider that too, that they are all the retelling of one battle. Like, and that this battle is actually a part of the original war of Ireland. Like Cromwell may as well be Manannán mac Lir or Nuada or anyone who, or Balor of the Evil Eye, or anyone who's on that battlefield. And then they just extended a life for him afterwards and carved it out. This may be true as well at the same time. We don't know for sure either way, but we have to think like New Ross here, actually. It's a funny one. We have to consider that it may not be true. So the Cromwell negotiated the surrender of fortified towns at Carlow, New Ross, and Clonmel. New Ross, Old Ross. I was in New Ross recently, actually, and I was thinking of the Empire of Ross as I was there. Beautiful spot, Wexford. Sure, we didn't even go to Wexford, but sure, it's all the same. It's the same story everywhere. But Oliver Cromwell is a chap that is worth mentioning here because he played such a major part in the civil wars of England and Scotland and Ireland. He was a serious genocidal maniac if what he did was if what they said he did, he actually did do. He was a genocidal maniac. Clone, huh? Oliver Oliver Clonewell, Oliver Crystal Android T1000. Oliver Cromwell was a T1000. Oliver Cromwell, 25th of April 1599 to 3rd of September 1658, was a T1000 English general and statesman. No, he wasn't. Maybe he was. But he was an army man who obliterated a lot of places. And there's some information there if you want to read it from Wikipedia, and take that with a pinch of salt too. Take everything with a pinch of salt. Who knows? So just to put time to parallel things up with England here as well, like you've got civil wars going on in England as well at the same time, and we're going to bring this up to a new gentleman. We're going to introduce another character, as if we don't have enough characters, we might say. We are going to bring it up to, or we're going to bring it up to James, King James the First, distributor and namesake of the King James Bible, the King James Version. King James has a bit of a history in Ireland as kind of a nice guy, but not a nice guy, as far as I can see. And he's an interesting character because there are a couple of representations of him. Some he is white-skinned, some he's dark-skinned. So that makes you think, were the people of Ireland and England, was there a dark-skinned element already here? And the weather could have been totally different. I'd say everyone could have been like tanned. Who knows? But like the reason I mentioned the dark skin is because the Moorish influence in Spain is a Moorish country. So if you've got the Moors and that dark skin influence, and then that being Ireland, and I was saying like, is Spain Ireland? So the Moors, and there's the name in Ireland, like Moore is a very common name. Like John Moore, very common name, Moore. And that's like the Moors. I don't even have a bit on the Moors here, but that's, you can check out the Moors for yourself. You could be going through it all day, like once you get into this, like you could just be going down every single rabbit hole and discussing every bit of it. And I don't think it's relevant enough to discuss in any great depth. But the English Civil Wars beginning around the 1600s as well, or 1640s, which is the same as like 30 Years' Wars going on as well in Europe. Siege of Drogheda is like 1641, no, 1649. See, Siege of Drogheda, 1641. So they wouldn't surrender, and supposedly Cromwell just obliterated the place and murdered everyone. He said his thing was hell or Connacht were the terms he thrust upon the native inhabitants. To hell or to Connacht. And that's an interesting one because in the mythology of Ireland, it was said that the Fir Bolgs were sent to Connacht and that the Tuatha Dé Danann took the land of everywhere else except for Connacht, and the Fir Bolg had to go to Connacht. So this is an interesting parallel that Cromwell says hell or Connacht for the natives. And for their part, across 300 years, have used the keenest expression of hatred, the curse of Cromwell on you. Upon all of us, there still lies the curse of Cromwell. That was said by Winston Churchill. He wrote that when he described the impact of Cromwell on England and Ireland, Anglo-Irish relations. Odysseus. What about Odysseus? And why is Odysseus in there? Odysseus is in there because he was mentioned in a book by someone along here somewhere, which I have evidently missed as my cue to start talking about it. So the writer of Odysseus is, I can't remember his name, but he's a famous Irish writer. I had a piece here. Let's see, Odysseus wiki. Oh yeah, here it is. We find it. Oh yeah, this is the one. So Odysseus, also known by the variant Ulysses, is legendary king. Alright, this isn't the one with the link. I thought it was. Not to worry. Anyway, we're going to talk about Odysseus for a minute, and the link is going to become apparent because Odysseus is another sly character, and he comes from Greek mythology, and he parallels an awful lot of the stories of Ireland as well. In that he's away and he comes back to his home and takes his home back. So I wonder, is there a parallel here with Odysseus? And there's a parallel with Odysseus and Cromwell is the parallel that was going to be drawn with it, because somebody wrote and compared Cromwell, the writer of Ulysses, James Joyce, the writer of Ulysses, that's his name. He made a comparison of some sort with Ulysses. Maybe it was in this one here. I'd like to get the words because I found it. I thought it was good. Kind of rang a bell. Let me just skim this a moment. Ho ho ho. I don't see anything about Yeats here or James Joyce. But the story goes anyway, as I remember it, that James Joyce mentioned Cromwell in relation to Ulysses, and Ulysses is Odysseus, and we're going to just talk about Odysseus a little bit. He is the legendary Greek king of Ithaca. So Ith, oh there it is, Ith. Ith is the name of the Milesian who wanted to come to Ireland, who saw Ireland, and the Ith was the guy that was killed by the Tuatha Dé Danann. So Ith was sent to Ireland to go and take over the country that they reckoned they were promised. They were from Spain. He was related to Phanes, I think was his name. Phanes Milas, and they were Spaniards, and Ith was the son, and Ith was killed. But just interesting here that Odysseus is from Ithaca, the king of Ithaca. King of Ith. Was he the father of Ith? Was Ithaca his son? King of Ithaca. I know Ithaca is a place as well, but you know the way they play with words. He was in the Trojan War, and he had a very long homecoming where he had to spend all sorts of adventures getting up to all sorts of crazy, having all sorts of crazy adventures with mythical, magical creatures and beasts and all sorts. But there's a strong parallel with Odysseus here and some of the characters in our story. And the reason what caught my eye with Odysseus after reading the link to Cromwell was he's well known among the Greeks as an eloquent speaker and an ingenious and cunning trickster. And also, once again, the trickster god is generally Loki, uh, who is the god in that show, The Mask. When you put the mask on, masks are particularly prevalent at the moment in history. You put the mask on and it turns you into this green character, but that mask was related to Loki, and Loki was a shapeshifter because he could wear many masks. He was the god of the mask and he was a trickster, so he was a shape-shifting trickster. And Odysseus went on many crazy journeys, and he also was turned into different shapes during his journeys by the goddess Athena. She turned him into an old man at one stage. She helped him along his way. So Athena and Odysseus were good buddies, just like Eru was good buddies with some other cronies like Bress. Son of Laertes. Laertes has caught my eye from Hamlet, and that's enough on Odysseus there. And that brings us up to the Battle of the Boyne, which is in the late 1690s. So we're up to 1700, and there's still battles happening in Ireland. The remains, the fallout from the mighty wars of the earlier few hundred years, were they still going on, or is this just a retelling of another battle that happened during the same time as all the other battles? And they said, let's take the battle that happened in the Boyne and let's put that one at 1690. And at that time, let's call this Cromwell character, or this American character, or this whoever character is the conqueror. This time we're going to call him King William. Sorry, King James and King William. So this is where King James comes into it. Now this was King James the Second, it's not King James the First. King James the First, I think, was earlier in the stories. We'll check that there shortly. We have a bit of info on him. But we're looking at the Battle of Boyne, and we're saying again, like, is this a battle that actually happened in 1690, or was this something that happened during all of the other battles? Was the 1690s and the 1700s, was it just a clean-up operation? There was no battles to be had, maybe. Like when the Flight of the Earls had happened, if they weren't controlling the Star Civilization, like, who was controlling anything? I don't think that any humans, after losing a technological civilization like that, would be in a position to resist an army. And that's what the stories of the British colonization effort tell, that they literally came into native people who were walking around. They didn't really know what was going on. They were a bit fucking dizzy. They were just in nature, and they didn't really know anything about the buildings or the landscape that was around, and they had stories of gods returning, and they accepted the white people in all circumstances, and if they didn't, the whites slaughtered them. This is all in the early 1600s and 1500s, and that's the story. So why there'd be battles in Ireland? I am thinking that Ireland was as ravaged as the rest of the world, and any battles that are now discussed, I'm thinking, were all I think they were possibly all pre the final loss, pre the time that the gods said, enough's enough, enough devastation. Whenever that was, whenever the tech turned off, whenever they turned off the tech, what happened to turn off the tech? Who was battling in these battles? Was it people versus people? Was it clones versus clones? Was it people versus clones? Was it gods versus avatars? Was it robots? Like T1000s, fancy T1000s with guns coming out their arms. Uh, you know, it's all on the table right now, and I can't, for what it's worth, I just I can't dismiss even the most ridiculous of theories at the moment because everything is just mind blowing, and none of it makes any sense really at all. It's all ridiculous. The whole crystal, the whole thing, just as a mud flood is ridiculous, just as a conspiracy theory is ridiculous when you're plugged into the matrix, and until your mind gets some time to absorb the information correctly, it seems almost surreal. It's like it can't be true, but it is true. But it can't be true, but it is. But it can't, but it is. It's one of those, ah, it's one of those moments. So I have a little bit here. I think we're going to introduce this chap here for a finish because it really brings a full circle, and we're going to go into a little bit of Middle East, a little bit of biblical. This is King James. King James, the first and fifth, I think they call him. We'll go into the details of his name in a minute. He was the guy who was accredited with the King James Bible, and he spread it about. And in this, he is depicted as dark-skinned man. There are pictures of him as a light-skinned man also, like this one here, the next one that I should just press across to. And here he is with some fancy gear. He's got his little ball thing, he's got his staff, he's got these jobbies behind him, he's got a serious crown, he's got one of these thingies, whatever they do. Like, he's well protected, he's flipping, he's ready. This guy's ready. But this is King James, the first of England, King James the sixth and first. So it's King James the first, King James the sixth and first. And before we go, we'll leave a little introduction into him, and then we're gonna end this episode, and then we'll move on to what I think is probably going to be the final part of this belter of a series. It's been great fun, nearly there, and loving every bit of it. So King James, who we're going to see next time, he was the King of Scotland and King of England and Ireland as well. From 1567, he was King of Scotland, and on 1603 he became King of England. The Kingdom of Scotland and England were individual sovereign states with their own parliaments, though both were ruled by James in personal union. James was the son of Mary, Queen of Scots, and a great-grandson of Henry VII, King of England and Lord of Ireland, and thus a potential successor to all three thrones. So this is the guy that gave out the King James Bible. His name is James. We're going to go into the etymology of his name, what it means, who he links back to, who he might be, and we're going to see where the end of the story goes. I'm not really sure where the exact ending is going to finish, but we're getting close to it. We're getting close. We're running out of time. We're running out of characters. So let's dive into James in the next one. We're going to look at some biblical references. We're going to look at the etymology of James, and we're going to dip into a little bit of Egypt, and we're going to bring it back to Ireland, and then we're going to wrap it all up real nice. So thanks for watching. Really, really enjoyed this episode, putting it together. I know there's a lot of text in these ones. It's just the way I suppose it's going to go for a finish. Some pictures. We're going to knit the story together. Hopefully we'll get some extra map work in and some more nice buildings. Maybe some nice fancy cathedrals. I'm sure there's some fancy stuff related to this lad, James. So let's have a look and find some places related to King James, and we'll see where that takes us. So all the best. Take care and think good thoughts. Enjoy.